In the archive photographs of Catherine Deneuve, outside the Cannes Palais des Festivals, and if you're a woman over 60 wondering what sunglasses actually suit a face that's changed, this is where the answer lives. From the 1960s through the 2000s, the sunglasses barely change. Oversized, square, or slightly winged at the corners. What the trade now formally calls a cat eye or butterfly frame. The acetate heavier than current fashion tends to favor. The lens tinted just enough to blur the eyes without hiding them. Across 5 decades of red carpets and one very long career, that shape recurs often enough that fashion archivists have started treating it less as a choice than as a signature, the way a monogram sits in the corner of a handkerchief. A few hundred kilometers south, on the French Riviera, in 1969, on the set of La Piscine, filmed largely in and around Saint-Tropez, Jane Birkin wore a different shape entirely. Round tortoiseshell, large enough that the fashion press of the era called it a bug eye, with lenses tinted pale blue. The same Jane Birkin whose name would later become synonymous with the Hermes Birkin bag, which tells you something about the weight her taste carried in the world of luxury fashion. Vogue's own retrospectives credit that film with setting the tone for eyewear through the following decade. Birkin kept some version of that round shape in rotation for the rest of her life, long after the film itself had faded from most people's memory. Between them, Deneuve and Birkin account for most of what people picture when they picture French sunglasses. Not because French style depends on either woman specifically, but because the logic behind both choices is the same logic, arrived at separately by two faces that needed opposite things from a piece of acetate and glass. One shape adds structure to a face that's softened. The other adds softness to a face that was always structured. Almost nobody needs both kinds of correction at once, which is part of why almost nobody in this tradition owns more than 2 frames. The square or butterfly frame, the cat eye, cut wide at the temple and close along the cheekbone, does something specific to a face as it ages. It draws a straight, deliberate line across a part of the face that started to lose its own edges. Round face shapes and fuller faces tend to suit it for exactly that reason, since the geometry of the frame contrasts with the roundness underneath, rather than repeating it. Women who've watched their jawline soften over the years often find this the more flattering of the 2 shapes, not because it disguises anything, but because it gives the eye somewhere new to rest. On oval or heart-shaped faces, the same butterfly frame can feel like too much geometry, meeting too little resistance, which is where the round frame earns its place. The round tortoiseshell works in the opposite direction, on a narrower or more angular face, a longer oval, a defined square. The curve of the frame fills space that bone structure alone no longer fills, and the warm, mottled brown of real tortoiseshell acetate sits close enough to natural coloring that it reads as an extension of the face rather than something laid over it. Both shapes have lasted for a reason that has nothing to do with either actress, and the American Academy of Ophthalmology has been making this point for years. Oversized sunglasses aren't simply a look. A larger lens covers more of the eye and the skin surrounding it, and a slight curve at the temple blocks peripheral light that a smaller, flatter frame lets straight through. That matters more as eyes get older, since the lens inside a human eye becomes less efficient at filtering ultraviolet light with age, which is one reason cumulative sun exposure gets linked to cataracts and macular degeneration later in life. None of that requires a diagnosis or a specialist's referral to act on. It only requires choosing a lens that actually blocks the light. A dark tint by itself says nothing about what a lens is filtering. The label does. Look for 100% UVA and UVB protection, or the designation UV 400, on the inside of the arm or on the tag still attached in the shop. Frames from houses like Ray-Ban, Persol, and Oliver Peoples tend to carry this certification as standard, which is one reason those names recur when the conversation turns serious about eye health rather than just aesthetics. Buying 2 frames instead of 20 starts to look, in this light, less like a style choice and more like an engineering one. A woman over 60 who owns 1 pair that adds structure and 1 pair that adds softness has covered nearly every situation she's likely to walk into, from driving into low winter sun to an afternoon at a cafe table in early June. She's also stopped trying to solve a problem that was solved decades ago by 2 women who'd never shared a screen credit, wearing the same idea in different rooms for different reasons at the same time. There's a practical way to find both shapes without guessing. The cat eye or butterfly frame should sit wide enough that the outer edge extends slightly past the widest point of the face, not stop short of it, since a frame that ends before the face does creates the opposite effect to the one it's meant to have. The round tortoise shell should be checked in daylight rather than shop lighting, because the amber and brown mottling of quality acetate that reads as rich and warm under a window can look flat and plastic under fluorescent light, and the difference between a convincing tortoise shell and an unconvincing one is entirely a matter of how the pattern catches natural light. Neither shape is new, and neither is likely to be replaced by whatever comes through the trend cycle this year or next. A frame bought because it suited a face in a particular decade tends to still suit that face in the next one, since bone structure changes slowly, and a well-made acetate frame doesn't go out of style so much as it goes quiet. Sitting in a drawer between the 2 occasions each week, it gets worn. Deneuve still wears some version of the same shape she wore 40 years ago, remade many times over by many different houses, the proportions never moving much at all.